Oh hey everyone, just gearing up for this winter vortex we're supposed to get. Should make for some interesting football though. Alright, let's get into the trades this week. Enough of that, no. First, Kirk traded Cam Newton, Odell Beckham Jr., and Giovanni Bernard to Micah for Dez Bryant, Russell Wilson, and Micah's 9th round draft pick. I think Kirk will get the advantage in this week. Maybe not by much, maybe not in the long run. Dez and Russell went off this week. But as a whole, Cam Newton's been doing pretty well, and all things considered, Odell's getting better every week. Plus, once Gio gets back, I think he'll be huge. I think Jeremy Hill will stop taking all the touches once Gio's healthy, so I think that will benefit Micah. So I think both guys gain a little bit from this. And then I just traded with Tony, and I traded Emmanuel Sanders and Ronnie Hillman for Mark Ingram and Brandon Marshall. I understand Emmanuel Sanders has been doing extremely well. It was really tough to part with him. And Ronnie Hillman's been doing well too, but Ronnie Hillman's out for the next 2 weeks, and this trade was not designed for me for long term. It was designed for me to win right now. I'm just trying to secure a better seed in the playoffs, and I have a tough opponent in my wife this week, so I'm trying to get a win. I think long term Tony probably comes away. I think Mark Ingram will get fewer and fewer carries once Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson start getting back into the mix. And Brandon Marshall's been struggling this week, so I'm kind of banking on hopefully Brandon Marshall starts to step it up. But we'll see how that plays out. Let's look at what went down in Week 10. Rick against myself. I didn't have a ton of guys with success this week, but Rick's team really struggled, except for, of course, Ron Rodgers, who went off for 48 fantasy points against crappy Bears. 3 of Rick's players scored 0 or fewer points, so that helped me get the win. Tyler against Nate. What an ugly game. Ugly matchup there. Tyler had a good performance from Eddie Lacy and Martavis Bryant, but with negative 3 points from your quarterback, it's going to be tough to win against anyone. Despite the negative points, though, Tyler only lost by 8, so Nate's team was almost equally as bad. But Nate gets an ugly win. Jessica against Kirk. Not a good game. Kirk did get a good game from Tony Romo and Odell Beckham. But the story I like to see is Denard Robinson. He's been killing it lately, which has been awesome. I don't know that it's sustainable, but it's nice to see a Michigan guy consistently doing well, other than Tom Brady. And Jessica had Peyton, so when you have Peyton, you're going to win a lot of games. He gave her 39, and it wasn't even that outrageous. I mean, that's just kind of what we expect from Peyton. So that kind of did Kirk in, so Jessica gets the W. Tony against Dave. Close game here. Both guys had a lot of buys. Tony's team, almost all of his guys had double digits, where Dave had a few really high scores and a few really low scores. So it was 2 kind of different point distributions. But Tony played Andrew Hawkins, who was out, and the Texans' defense, who was on bye. So Dave got the win. Evan against Cam. Cam got a huge game from his defense. Jimmy Graham, Kelvin Benjamin, both got big games. Jay Cutler blows. But luckily, so does Evan's whole team. Evan, I'm willing to trade if you're interested. I'm up for trading you guys. Cam gets a 60-point win, which you would think is going to be blowout of the week. But it was topped just barely by Micah versus Justin, and I did not see this coming at all. Micah's team absolutely went off. 40 points from base mode, 27 from Dez, who Micah gave up, 18 from Orange Julius. Just a great week for him. Justin's team scored probably the lowest that he will for the rest of the season. But Micah gets a huge win. It's a 61-point win, so 1 more than Cam's win, and that would give Micah the blowout of the week. Who's the bonehead this week? Got to go Tony here. Had you played a defense at all, or your only other eligible person that could be put in the flex, instead of Andrew Hawkins, who was out, you would have won. So, got to go bonehead. Sorry, Tony. I will say it feels good for Tony to screw up, considering he beat me last week. But let's see where I was right, where I was wrong. I said Nate, Kirk, Cam, Dave, Micah, and myself would all win. So I only got the Kirk pick wrong. I knew it was kind of out there. Looking at the standings, Dave's at the top of the East with an 8-2 record. Jessica and I are close, though. We're both 7-3. Micah, with a big win, is 7-3 in the West. So he's at the top over there. I think we're close enough to start looking at the playoff schedule. If the playoffs were to start today, Dave would be playing Tony with the 1-8 matchup. I would be playing Cam. Jessica would be playing Justin. And Micah would be playing Nate. And Kirk and Rick, you guys are only one game back of the playoffs right now. So even though Rick made that terrible trade, he's still in the hunt. He could still make playoffs, which is crazy to think. Let's look at this week's matchups. Kirk against Tyler. So Kirk's going to get Des Bryant, but he's on a bye. Denard's on a bye, which is a bummer for Kirk. On paper, with those byes, Tyler's team looks better, but Tyler's lost 6 straight weeks. Kirk's guys have some good matchups, and I'll say Kirk finds a way to get the win. Dave against Rick. If you were to look at just the records overall, you would think it's the win's going to go to Dave, hands down. But if you look, Rick has AA Ron Rodgers, which I found out last week. He can do a lot, because that gave me a little bit of a scare. So he does have a shot, albeit a small one. If I look at each matchup, I think Rick is pretty close, but in the matchup that Rick wins, he wins by a narrow margin each time. In the matchups that Dave wins, they're pretty substantial. So I'll give Dave the win, but I don't think it'll be a huge victory. Cam against Tony. Cam's been doing well lately, but Jay Cutler is absolutely terrible. DeMarco Murray is on a bye week, and Andre Ellington has scored only 3 rushing touchdowns all season, and they're playing the Detroit Lions. They have a great defense right now. So I'm going to go with Tony, assuming he sets his lineup correctly. Justin against Evan. Justin wins. Nate against Micah. Granted, Nate still has yet to set his lineup, but Micah is currently projected to win by 61, according to ESPN. Nate's team just has too many injuries right now. I think once playoffs hit, assuming he makes playoffs, he can do some damage, but his guys right now just have too many injuries. Micah has won 3 in a row, and I think this week it'll be 4. All right, matchup of the week this week. We have myself against my wife, Jessica. This is the battle of who's going to sleep on the couch. Jessica and I are both 7-3, so this win would solidify second place in the East, or potentially first place if Dave happens to lose this week. So a lot on the line this week. Let's look at the matchups. At quarterback, we have Phillip Rivers against the Raiders, and Peyton. Phillip's going to try to bounce back against the Raiders, but Peyton is Peyton. So I'll give the matchup to Jessica on that one. C.J. Anderson against Darren Sproles. Had it not been for Sproles' punt return last week, he would have only had 7 points. I think C.J. will definitely get over that, so I'll give the nod to me. Mark Ingram versus Darren McFadden. Until the other 2 New Orleans running backs come back, I think Ingram will do well, and so I'll give him the go-ahead. Demarius versus T.Y. Hilton. Andrew Luck has to start sucking at some point, right? He's got to have a fluke of a game, but probably not against the Patriots. He's going to want to win that one. It's crazy, but I'll give the narrow advantage to T.Y. Hilton. Brandon Marshall versus Antonio Brown. Antonio will definitely want to bounce back. And Tennessee let Torrey Smith do well. Torrey Smith sucks. So I'll give Antonio Brown the ding. Travis Kelce versus Heath Miller. It's a close one, but Travis Kelce is the top 10 tight end. And so I'll give him the close lead on that one. Keenan Allen versus Steven Jackson. I said that Keenan would turn it around after the bye week, which was last week. So I'll stick with it. I'll go with Keenan Allen. Cardinals D against Seahawks D. Cardinals have been doing great, but they're against the Lions. And maybe it's wishful thinking, but I don't think it'll be great for the Cardinals defense. So we'll go Seahawks. Cody Parkey versus Phil Dawson. I think San Francisco will move the ball, but they'll struggle to finish. So I'll say Phil Dawson comes away with the advantage there. Just doing a quick recap. Giving myself an advantage with C.J. Anderson, Mark Ingram, Travis Kelce, Keenan Allen. That's only 4. Jessica has 5. So I think Jessica will get the narrow win this week. All right, stat of the week. The answer to last week's question, which was who has had the best fantasy football game since 2000 for standard league scoring. The answer was Clinton Portis, which surprised me. He had 54 fantasy points for one game. Priest Holmes was 6th. LaDainian Tomlinson, which was my guess, was 12th. And Peyton wasn't even in the top 12, which was surprising. So let's get to this week's question. All right. I was going to have a cool graphic like I usually do for Stat of the Week, but Kirk took his sweet-ass time getting me all this information, so I'm just going to say it. Kirk's question for all of us: how many top 25 fantasy running backs this year went undrafted in this year's fantasy draft? And I assume he means our fantasy draft, not the average draft. So for our fantasy draft, how many top 25 were not drafted and were free agents? Is it 6, 8, 9, or 10? And for a top 25 running back, you can really have one huge game. I'm just thinking of a couple off the top of my head. I'm sure Ronnie Hillman is up there. Brandon Oliver might be in that mix. Justin Forsett. Jerick McKinnon. Matt Asiata. So there's 4 or 5 right there. I'm going to say 9. I think it's going to be 9. So that's my guess. And we'll see next week whether I was right or I was wrong. One more thing, I just want to say congratulations to Tony, who got married over the weekend, to Sarah Van Spring. Well, Sarah Rabideau now. But so congrats, Tony. That's all I have for this week, guys. Have a good one.